Just joking. I haven't learned how to play yet, but I bought this the other day. Exciting. Hey legends, this is I Am Manifestation. I'm your conscious manifestation coach, Cerise, and I help you get out of your own way so you can manifest your version of an awesome fucking life. Yes, I've come back to that one. And yes, I almost didn't get the words out. So in today's video, by popular demand from mainly people on the regular live streams I've been doing on TikTok recently. So if you are on TikTok and you're not following me on there already, and you'd like to get some questions answered for free or learn secondhand from how I respond to other people's questions, my TikTok is linked below, as well as all my freebies, free resources, obviously my coaching information, all the things. So yeah, a lot of people on my live stream have been asking me about how I manifested my part-time job. So full disclosure, yes, I'm a conscious manifestation coach. I have my own business, but I do also still currently work part-time for someone else. There's many reasons for that, and I'll give you a brief rundown right now. I'll try to keep it short and concise because, as you guys know, I'm a bit of a waffler. I'm probably going to go off on a couple of tangents, but I think it's important background information. And a lot of you are always asking me about like my personal story, so this is part of it. So growing up, my kind of observations of how to make money and pay for the bills and things like that was working your ass off. My parents, still to this day, are very hard workers. And for a long time, up until recent years, really, I thought that was the only way. I thought even though I could see all of these other examples on social media and things like that, that people like me or where I grew up or with my experiences or past or whatever don't get to have those options. So thankfully, I understand now the mindset thing, law of assumption and all of that. And I've started to make changes in my life. But that was my experience. Those were my observations. As soon as I was old enough to start working, I started working. I started working in an office at 17, almost 18. I did a couple of little things in like retail and things like that for a few years because I thought at the time that it was kind of a fun industry to be in at that age where you could like, go out with people after work and things like that, which you can do with any job, right? But I don't know, just the like listening to music all day, or, that sort of aspect of retail at the time seemed, because I thought like it's either retail or office work. That's all I kind of thought I was able to do. Just before I moved back to Australia, so for those who don't know, I was born in Australia. I lived here till I was 7. Then we moved to New Zealand. I lived there for 15 years. My family moved back to Sydney 3 years before I moved back to Australia, and I now live in Melbourne. So not long before I moved back over, I was doing temping work, office kind of administration stuff. And that was when the last financial crisis was happening. And I say this because it's only a crisis if you think it is, because my experience this time around is not crisis mode at all, which comes down a lot to the type of job I manifested. So I struggled at that time to find work. I was out of work for like 7 months, which is part of the reason I ended up moving to Melbourne, because Sydney had the highest unemployment rate at the time. It was struggle street because I was buying into all of the things. Like I didn't understand how the mind works. I didn't understand conscious manifestation. I was buying into all of the scaremongering shit that was on the news. So yeah, it was a struggle. I ended up moving to Melbourne because I have extended family here. My mum's side of the family are mostly here. And so I was able to stay with them because of the unemployment rate in Sydney being so high. And I was able to then find work here. And I'm actually really grateful for that because Melbourne is definitely more me than Sydney. I started off working in retail once I got over here. That was the only thing that I could get at the time. And I'm not shitting on retail work at all. If it's something you enjoy, that's fucking awesome, right? Different strokes for different folks. But it wasn't what I was looking for. I was looking for an office job at that time. And just speaking on that, like the reason it was kind of office job was because my mum did that. She did reception and secretarial kind of work, back office work and things like that. And because my parents are only 18 years older than me, and I kind of saw the struggles that came along with having 3 children by their mid-20s and things like that. My brother and sister are 7 and 8 years younger than me. Well, I associated the like having kids young with the struggle, which I know is not necessarily everyone's experience. But this is how like subconscious gets programmed, is what you observe and how you like associate things with other things. So I knew that I didn't really want to go down the route of like having kids that young if it was something that I wanted at all. So I thought, I'm going to be a career woman. I'm going to work my way up the corporate ladder. I'm going to make a fuckload of money. And then when I'm ready, if I decide to have a family, I'll have, you know, a more financially stable situation for them than I have. And I thought that that was the way that people like me, the only way, and like really, it seemed like quite a prestigious way to get to making a decent amount of money, given where I grew up. And again, I'm not shitting on this. If you genuinely like working in corporate, like that's cool. I didn't. I did to some degree, but that was all coming from a place of like people pleasing and trying to prove myself, prove my worth. And obviously, what I teach now is that you're inherently worthy of everything you want, and you're not affirming and manifesting to believe. You're affirming to chip away at the disbelief that has created a dam, stopping the flow of your manifestations coming in your life. Eventually, I got back into an office and I had that job for 3 years, and it was the longest job that I had had at that point, but I did get made redundant. And I think where I kind of respected myself in a way, even though it seemed at the time like I was fucking myself over, was the company that I worked for essentially got taken over by another company, and they wanted us to, like the team that I was on, to apply for our own jobs that we'd already been doing for them, like under the new banner, the new company name. And I was like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, I've been recommended by my boss because I'm the hardest worker on my team. I'm the one that takes the least amount of like liberties, because there was like a girl on the team, 2 girls I think were both big smokers. Again, not like shit, but they like took fuckloads of breaks through the day. One of them was sick several, like every week, had sick days every week. And I was the one there that was there every day on time, stayed back if needed, but hardly took any breaks. And I'm not saying that that's a good thing necessarily, but as in my mindset at the time, I was like, I'm the hardest worker here, and you want me to fucking reapply for my job? Are you joking? Like, I understand that they should, if we have to at all, considering we've all 3 of us have been doing the job this whole time. So I accepted the redundancy over applying for my job, which I would have gotten, because I was just like, I've been here for 3 years. Like, no. In that time as well, I had experienced a couple of pay rises and knew that like I was a good worker. So my self-esteem in that sense, and more my self-worth in that sense, my self-concept about myself around like my work ethic was really good. And therefore I felt like I deserved better than to either be told that I was redundant or to have to apply for my own job again. However, that redundancy did knock my confidence a bit. I was out of work for 5 months before I found something again. And the job that I got after that, I was only in for just under 3 months. It was my first experience working in recruitment in a small boutique recruitment agency. And the reason that that happened was not because I was shit at my job. It's because it was a small boutique company, and their largest client had basically said to them, look, we want you to reduce our fees this ridiculous amount, or we're going to go somewhere else. And because they were their biggest client, and prior to getting an administrative person, all of the consultants there had divvied up the admin tasks. Financially, it made sense to the owner of that business to keep them on as a client and reduce the fees, which meant that they could no longer justify the cost of an admin person. So she did pay me as if I had been made redundant, even though I technically hadn't even made the 3-month probationary period. And there was no hard feelings. I totally understood, but it also like was again another knock to my confidence. Thankfully, it didn't take me long to get my next job. It was within a couple of weeks where I started working in big agency recruitment. And because of the redundancies that I had had, that kind of took away the confidence in myself and my abilities and my worth in terms of my self-concept to do with working. Like I was like, I felt very disposable, and I felt like then I really needed to prove myself. And I did. I did that. I worked my ass off. I was again the most reliable person on the team, the one that always stayed back if they needed. Because for anyone who's worked in big agency recruitment or a high volume, like kind of sales environment, phones generally need to be covered from quite early to relatively late. So the admins where I was were staggered in terms of start and finish time. So you'd work the same length of time each, but someone started at 7:30 and the person there the latest finished at 6 because we had to answer the phones. And I was always the person who, like, I did the earliest shift, but if someone was sick who did the late shift, I would stay back to cover the phones. Most of the time it was me. I won a bunch of awards, which only, and this is why sales environments can be so, they push the mindset thing, but they use it in a very manipulative way. Same thing I've seen with a lot of pyramid schemey kind of affiliate marketing situations. Not all affiliate marketing is that way, but there are ones that kind of have that pyramid scheme vibe to them. And they use, and MLMs as well, and I'm saying this, if you're in an MLM, I'm not shitting on you, but I am saying, like, keep in mind your person above you is using the mindset to manipulate you. So the awards and the drinks on the company and the little trips away and things like that were really just there to blind you from the fact that you were actually in a very toxic working environment. And I was not a recruiter, I was an admin. So because I wasn't a revenue making member of the company, people treated me like shit and they were allowed to. I stood up for myself. I got into trouble. I stopped standing up for myself because they programmed me to stop standing up for myself. And like, I grew up in the ghetto, so I've always stuck up for myself, right? But I worked here for almost 5.5 years. I would then go to HR and talk to them about how I was being treated and get done. And my above and beyond always became the new bare minimum. And I was expected to keep going above and beyond, above and beyond, above and beyond, to the point where I just got burnt out. So giving and giving and giving, and really just like being leached off by these people and treated terribly by these people, which I only allowed because of the knock to my confidence that I had had in my working kind of life previously. It burnt me out. I got burnt out. There was like the last year or so I was there, I literally felt like my legs were made of lead. I was exhausted all the time, but I could never like get enough sleep, tired but wired. Like I went, and then like it just got to the point where like that wasn't even it. I was just burnt out. I had nothing left to give. And I left. And when I left that job, I was like, I'm going to go. I don't want to manage anymore. I knew that much because the people I had managed just took the piss. And I was okay with making a bit less money if that was what stepping down from managing meant. But I actually ended up getting paid 5K more in a non-management role. That was very crazy. And I'll talk about that in a moment. But when I left that job, keep in mind, like as the office manager, which is the position I was in when I left, when people left, I made a huge effort to do a collection. I made like a really cool hamper for everyone, or if they were traveling, because we had a lot of expats who worked there, I'd like top up a visa with like a decent amount of money, like a prepaid visa card so that they could have that. I made an effort, right? When I left, the card, most of the people who signed the card said, we're going to miss your baking. Not thank you for the blood, sweat, and fucking tears you put into like looking after an office of 70 fucking adult toddlers. And the gift, and it's not about the gift, it's about the effort behind the gift. The gift was like, I would have preferred no gift, honestly, but the gift was a $50 gift voucher from the prize cupboard that I had purchased for the company, because that was part of my job, was to buy the gifts in the gift cupboard. So 0 effort was made. It was like people totally forgot I was leaving. I was just a number. I didn't matter. I was replaceable. I was disposable, blah, blah, blah. So when I was actively looking for my next job, which is not the one that I'm in, it's a bit of a story time. This is sorry. I'm a waffler, okay? I feel like this is necessary for you to understand the mindset I was in. Oh, and I do want to say, when I worked in recruitment, we had, I think it was news.com.au as the default page that our browser opened up on. And one day when I was like thinking like, this can't be normal. Like people surely don't just push through burnout until they're like 65 or whatever and then retire. Like that just seems like such a waste of your time here on earth, you know? So I think I then, well, I must have, right, manifested seeing an article on news.com.au. And it was basically about a woman who had worked her way up the corporate ladder to like six figures or something ridiculous, like worked her way pretty high up. And eventually, like, got burnt out, was like, where I was at mindset wise, like, this can't be the only way. Like, I refuse to think that this is what life is supposed to be. Left her six-figure corporate job, sold all her belongings, moved to a tropical island, worked part-time in an ice cream shop, and spent the rest of her time as she fucking pleased on this beautiful tropical island. And I thought, you know what? The only reason I wanted to keep making more and more money was to really justify to myself why I was putting myself through working myself into the ground, to like feel compensated for the time and energy that I was putting into this company that was treating me like shit. And so in comparison, I was like, I would much prefer what she's doing to this, even if it was just part-time money that literally paid for my necessities. I would be happier doing that and having the time freedom and not being stressed and not being treated terribly by people in an environment that doesn't even let me stick up for myself. And that kind of opened my mind to things. I was like, holy shit, okay, there's another way. This isn't the only way that I have to do things. And so when I left that job, I was like, again, I don't want to manage. I knew all the things I didn't want, which is why I want to say this, which is why we experience like things on a spectrum, right? Because a lot of times we won't know what we actually do want until we experience something we don't want and we know, okay, what's the opposite to that or what's better than that? And remember, in this world, like we not everyone assigns the same meanings to things. So what I think is shit might be something that someone else quite enjoys or doesn't have an issue with. That's why we're presented with all these things. And then as you go along your journey, as you finesse your practice and you do the things that I recommend on top of just worrying about your thoughts, you'll get to a level of calm where you're able to notice when the anxiety is just a twinge as opposed to I'm burnt out because I've been running on anxiety for so long that I didn't even realize I was anxious because I was just in that constant state. And I've experienced that a couple of times, which is why I have like the cheat codes that I teach you. It's not just all about the thoughts, like the thoughts are the seed, but there's more to it. And if you want the journey to be as enjoyable as possible. And like we've all heard, probably somewhere before in some way, shape, or form, in some combination of words, enjoy the journey. So I was like, I knew I didn't want to manage. If I could make the same amount of money doing like not managing, that would have been cool. I ended up getting 5K more because I knew that I was a good worker, but I also wanted a cruisier job. And I got that. But I still had a story in my mind at the time that as long as I worked for someone else, there was like, it was going to be shit, basically. And they could change my job or they could, you know, like things, they could change whatever. Like, and that's kind of like in a contract, anyone who works in admin knows that you've got something in your like position description, right, that says ad hoc tasks, which basically means they can get you to do anything under the admin umbrella outside of what's bullet pointed in your position description. So as long as I worked for anyone else, I thought they can just get me to do shit that's not even part of my position description. And sure enough, 3 months into working that new job, I don't know why it sounded like my balls just dropped. 3 months into working that new job, that must not be named, that affected the whole world for a few years, hit. And my job completely changed. It was not the same job whatsoever. It became, I think they worked out that my team's workload grew something like, I can't remember, it was 400% or 600%. Either way, it was ridiculous. I didn't want to answer phones, which I wasn't initially part of my job, like incoming calls. Then it became part of my job. High volume incoming calls. I had done that for 5.5 years in big agency recruitment. So I didn't want that. And that's what ended up happening. Everything that I had kind of tried to move away from essentially somehow became part of my job again. And so what I did was made the most of that time, making the the extra money, being in, at the time, the most locked down city in the world. And, you know, I had a lot of friends at the time who were like online shopping heaps and still spending all the same amount of money that they would have normally. And I was like, not doing that. I was like, why would I? Personally, I just put most of my money away. And that was really good in a way, because when I left that job, I took almost a whole year off working for someone else. And whilst that led to me now working for someone else again part-time, the positive was I got a taste of what time freedom was. Being able to do things in my own time, waking up one day and being like, I don't feel motivated. I did start my own business then. It was a separate business, a different business to this, which is no longer in existence, called Concrete Jungle Hippie. Anyone who's listened to my podcast will have heard me talk about it. And it was 100% natural, plastic-free body care business, but similar to baking, right? Like, everyone loves my baking and they're always like, Cerise, your cookies are the best cookies I've ever had. You could make so much money if you had a cookie stall. I like baking when I feel like baking, not when I have to bake. And it was the same with making these products. Like, I enjoyed making them when I felt like making them, but I didn't enjoy making them to order. I didn't enjoy having clutter in my home of like supplies and jars and bottles. I didn't enjoy, I didn't like the fact, or the lifestyle that I had envisioned for myself when I had tasted the time freedom, was like being able to pick up and go anywhere I want and still be able to run my business from my laptop and my phone, et cetera, like a bunch of things. I'll make a list on one of the sides of the pages. And that business did not line up with the lifestyle I wanted, that I'm still, you know, manifesting to 100%. So it didn't work out. Like, there was just so many things. I was coming at it from a place of fear, like, this has to work because I don't want to work for someone else, which made it not work. I was panic buying things to sell in my store when I wasn't making any money from the things I was currently selling. I was panic selling, like doing sales that if people bought from it all, like, I barely made any money. It was just not worth it, especially considering I had to make the product. And also it had upfront costs, right? Like, I had to buy the supplies and set things up and blah, blah, blah. And what I really wanted to do was teach conscious manifestation. So during that period of time, I started my podcast, and I was still, I would say, still relatively early in my journey, even though I'd been doing it for a while. Like, I waited until I put it into practice for a bit, had some experience with it in the real world and not in theory, before I started talking about it. And then it was a while before I felt comfortable coaching people outside of people that I knew. So I was doing the podcast during that period as well. And eventually I just got to the point where, like, my savings were running out. The year was almost up. And the amount that I had to spend each month had dwindled because I was making all these panic purchases with money that I wasn't making from my business. So then my monthly amount got smaller and smaller. And I was like, okay, I'm not even going to do a clearance sale. I'm just going to close this business down. Like, this is actually not what I'm supposed to be doing. And I started I Am Manifestation soon after I got the job that I currently have. So going into this part-time job thing, that was a really long, hopefully I've edited it down so it wasn't too long. And I'll let you know at this, hopefully I would have remembered to let you know at the start of the video that you can skip to the how I manifested my part-time job. But essentially I did touch on it by saying, like, you will experience things that you don't like to figure out what you do like. And only if you don't do your nervous system regulation and your self-concept work and focus on the things that you enjoy, will the things that you don't like get to the point where you get burnt out, unwell, or give up, right? So when you do your nervous system regulation work, you are able to notice things you don't like when it's just a tiny little bit of irritation. It's just a tiny bit of anxiety. And you're like, oh yeah, no, I'm not going there, not doing that, not being around those people, blah, blah, blah. And that feeling is there to steer you away from what is not in line with the end goal that you're telling yourself that you already have all the time, or that you know is coming, right? So I had a list of things that I didn't want, which I've told you in like the backstory. And I knew the lifestyle that I was building. I knew that I enjoyed the time freedom that I had had over that almost year that I wasn't working for anyone else. And I knew that I didn't want to work in recruitment or sales. And the reason I'm laughing is because I work in recruitment, not as a recruiter, as the office admin. But the funny thing is, I knew what I wanted and I wasn't going to settle for less than that. And I had enough money to not settle for like the first job that I was offered if it wasn't what I wanted, right? And I also was not looking at recruitment jobs. Like I wasn't, if something came up when I was doing a search for work, I wasn't looking at anything that was within recruitment. And pretty quickly, I received a call. I got headhunted the first time in my life by my current boss. And he basically described everything that I was wanting as far as working for someone else again. And honestly, I was so blunt, like not rude and not aggro when I spoke to him, but I was just like, look, to be honest with you, like I have no interest in working in recruitment. I like the sound of all the other things, but like this has been my experience. I don't want to be like I got burnt out working in recruitment before. I didn't like the environment. I found like recruitment to be very toxic. Because I was burnt out as in the time off that I've had, doing my own thing, I've started socializing again. I have like hobbies that I've picked back up or started that I didn't have the time or energy to do before. Like these are all things that I don't want to give up. And because I am the kind of person who will put my hand up to like stay back and blah, 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 blah. Like I'm really looking for a job that doesn't require that of me because I'll do it until I'm burnt out because that was the habit I was in. And he was like, look, I totally understand. This is a small boutique recruitment agency. Everyone who works here, including myself, has worked in big agency recruitment. We've experienced the negative things that you're talking about. This is not how I run my business. They don't even really have KPIs. Like they have, like in terms of, again, if you've worked in sales or recruitment, you know that it's like usually a lot of pressure. Like they have ideas of what he wants to make for his business because it's still his business, but it's not like if you don't make this much, you're going to lose your job kind of pressure on the consultants. He was like, you're not expected to stay back. If you need to leave early, because I was playing touch pretty consistently, touch rugby and standard touch at the time, as a social sport. He was like, if you need to leave early for a game, that's cool. Like it was above and beyond what I even wanted, which is always the way, because you're like your subconscious always, or your world, however you want to look at it, your universe, if that's how you want to see it, God, doesn't matter, always over delivers whatever you're most consistently thinking, good or bad. So I was thinking of all the things I knew I wanted. I knew like I can have these things. I'd seen enough from the article to the progress that I'd made in the job that I initially got after my recruitment job that started off being really cruisy, more money, blah, blah, blah. So I was like, I know that I can do less work and make more money. I had seen enough where I was like, I don't need to settle. I just need to. And obviously I had a better understanding of conscious manifestation and the law of assumption. And yeah, I knew that there were opportunities out there. Now, what I want to say here before I continue is if, and this is why time crunches, manifesting for a time crunch doesn't work for a lot of people, is because then you start to notice the date coming closer that you need to have a job by, and you're actually coming at it from fear and pushing away the opportunities. So if you don't have as much time as I had to find a job that you didn't want to settle for, and you do something in the meantime that just pays for the necessities whilst you find something that's better suited for you, or do what I'm doing, work a part-time job that pays for your necessities. Mine luckily gives me a bit of play money as well. Whilst you're building a business, like that's okay. I have no shame in it. And like I said, I manifested a job that I'm quite happy in as long as I need to or want to work for someone else. Really, the only reason I'm still in it is because I'm getting inspired action to release my course, and that perfectionism in me has been creeping up. And I also got burnt out from a personal situation, in terms of like a toxic social group that I was involved in, which is why I said I was playing touch regularly, and I am not at the moment. Again, all circumstances that can be changed, but that's videos for another day. And so I know once I start releasing my courses, because there's a few that I have up here that I just need to put out, and this is why I'm going to be recording videos for that after this, that my business will start to grow a lot faster. So, like I said, I was very straight up with him, very blunt about what I didn't like, and these are things that we're told that you shouldn't say in an interview. And I was just like, no, I don't care. Like if he doesn't like it, like he headhunted me kind of thing. So I felt pretty confident anyway. But then even then, because I knew my worth and because I knew there were options and because I knew there was a different way to the things I had experienced before, and I decided that I was not going to do things the same way as I had done before. He said to me, like, basically, I'm really happy with our interview because I obviously went to the interview. I've been really happy with the chat we've had. It was pretty informal as well. To be fair to all the other applicants, as you can probably understand, I'll need to interview them and then I'm planning on getting in touch with everyone that we interviewed next week and letting them know how they progressed. But I'm basically you can look forward to knowing that I'm going to call you next week and ask you to come and meet the team. And I was like, yeah, cool, no worries. He called me the same afternoon of my interview and he was like, look, I know I said I need to give all the other applicants a fair go, but I'm really happy with our chat. And I'd like, if you're okay with it, to book you in to come and meet the team next week. So it was at the end of the week that I had my interview. So the start of the next week, I went in and met the team. That all went really well. So it was a very quick process. And it was a quicker process than he had even planned. And yeah, so I've worked there for just over a year and a half, which has gone so quickly because I guess they say time flies when you're having fun. And like I laugh with these people. It's a great environment. It's like I had my first review a few months ago and he wants to make sure that like his employees are happy. Right? I got a pay rise as well, which I have a video on. I think it'll be here, but it could be here. Yeah. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's here, which is in this job. Whenever he changes my tasks, he asks me, is that going to fit into your day? And is it going to be stressful? Because he knows that like I'm like the kind of person who will make it fit, but even if that means I'm running on adrenaline, like he gives a shit about his employees. He checks with me to see if I like my tasks. And I said to him in my review, I was like, you can make me do tasks I don't like, right? Like you are my boss. But he doesn't give me more than I can handle. He doesn't even give me as much as he thinks I can squeeze into a day. He makes sure that like it's a pretty chill environment. People aren't sitting running on adrenaline to get shit done so they can leave on time and live their lives outside of work. It's the best job I've ever had in terms of like having to work for someone else. And I feel really lucky, but I also know that I created it for myself. So I think those are all the points I wanted to cover. The story in the beginning again was a lot longer than I had planned, but I honor the tangents and I honor the waffling because so many people say they get something good out of that. Again, I'll try to edit it. Hopefully I edited it down enough that the video wasn't too long. But I hope that was inspiring. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe so I can continue to make free content that helps as many people as possible because everyone deserves to live their version of an awesome fucking life and everyone can. You're a fucking legend. Don't you ever forget it. And until next time, have a good one. Just in case you may have noticed that there's not been very good continuity here. Yes, this is the week after I filmed the initial little intro. I liked the intro so much, but I fucked up the video because I think I pressed stop instead of pause when I was taking a break from recording and something happened. Anyway, let me know if you noticed.